Good morning. My name is Byron Kimmel. It's my pleasure to deliver the message in this installment, the next installment, I should say, on missing persons. This has been a really interesting sermon series that I hope you've enjoyed. I've also been very curious about what Diane's been doing with these boxes. And hopefully we'll find out soon how these all go together and what the story is behind that. But there is a story with those. But that's hopefully going to be coming to close here soon, and we can find out what's going to happen. Palm Sunday. What is it? Well, it's Jesus' triumphant entry that starts Holy Week, the city of Jerusalem, the city of peace, which is really a heavy dose of irony because there's never usually peace in Jerusalem. But when Jesus entered the city gates, throngs of people lined the streets waving palm leaves. Palm leaves were a sign of a victorious king and army returning from battle. Shouts of Hosanna, praise be to God, as Jesus entered, as their Messiah entered the city. Today's message is titled, Pleasing the Crowd, Truth or the Crowd, and today our focus is on Pilate. When Pastor Dan showed me the sermon series grid for missing persons, and he opened it up for opportunities for us on staff to do some of the sermons for it, I immediately was drawn to this one on Pilate. Who is he? What is he about? I've always found him a very interesting biblical character and how his role plays out in the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ. I want to begin with an illustration to help bring this text to life and give you more of a context for it. And I'll set this back. No one knows how it or when it got started. It happens the same way every year. The new students at Tippecanoe High School, the freshmen, enter their first pep rally. There's a tradition that the cheerleaders lead, and it's a number chant. So you take the year of your graduation, and unfortunately, mine's 1992. So if they were doing the number cheer for my class, it goes 92, 92, 999992. And then the class behind them does their number, then the class next, and then the freshmen. It's interesting that when the freshmen get their opportunity to say their number, they are met with a roistering smattering of boos. Not just boo, it's loud. And in fact, it can shake the bleachers. I've always found this extremely interesting, a little bit annoying. Why did something like that start? How did it start? There's so many questions I've always had. I've even had arguments with my boys about it. I said, why do you participate in this? What good comes out? Oh, Dad, it's harmless. Everybody does it. It's just a tradition. We just boo the freshmen, and then, the next year, those people that were being booed, they get to boo the next freshman, and it just keeps going on and on and on and on. But I still find something with that interesting. So I dug into it a little bit deeper about crowd psychology. And I came across a TED Talk from a University of Sussex professor named John Drury, who's studied the psychology of a crowd, and in 2014 delivered a TED Talk summarizing his findings. And he said in his summation of his research, crowds can provide the emotional power to quickly shift an individual from the realm of personal identity to social identity. Let me say that again. Crowds can provide the emotional power to quickly shift an individual from the realm of personal identity to social identity. You seemingly take on what the loudest roar is, and that identity associated with that. So when I looked at that and I listened to that TED Talk, there were three questions that kind of came up when I was watching that. Number one, who sets the standards of the crowd's identity? Who sets the tone? Usually it's somebody who's loud, sometimes obnoxious, passionate. Maybe they want some attention. Maybe the biggest person, biggest booming voice. Number two, what role does truth play in the crowd's identity? Unfortunately, sometimes not much at all. Not much at all. But it's the third question that I want to focus today on is, how do we navigate the influence of the crowd? And it's that last question that precisely Pontius Pilate is dealing with in our scripture reading today. We're going to unpack Pilate and his interaction with Jesus and the crowd. Early in the morning, Pilate hears a knock on the door, the Antonio fortress. There stands several of the chief priests and the high priest Caiaphas with a ragged, wavering, cut up, exhausted Jesus. You think about what Jesus' last few hours have been like. He was in the upper room. He had some bread and some wine. He left the upper room and he went to the Garden of Gethsemane, and then he was in such anguish, he sweat blood. Angels had to attend to him. From there, one of his own disciples that had spent the last several years with him traveling around, who had seen all the miracles, had seen the casting out of evil spirits, who had seen his power over nature, turned him over for 30 pieces of silver. He's whisked off to the high priest's quarters, beaten, spit upon, slapped along the way, in chains. Thursday, part of the sermon on Judas, I will show you where Jesus stayed while he was at Caiaphas' quarters. It's a sobering sight. And about 6 to 6:30 in the morning, now he's drug off to Pilate's Antonio fortress. What do we know about Pontius Pilate? Let's pause for a moment and zero in on the Roman governor. Number one, he's a soldier and the fifth prefect, or governor, as the Roman hierarchy calls it, of Judea. He was in Judea for about 10 years. He was put in power by the Roman Emperor Tiberius, who eventually we will find out does brutal persecution of the early church. What's a governor do? Well, they collect taxes. They build things. They're in charge of the construction projects, the infrastructure of the empire. And last, law and order. Keep people in line. So Pilate took this position and wanted to send a message to his new subjects. When he first arrived in Judea, he ordered some Roman insignias, more than likely the Roman eagle that was on the standard that the Roman legions took into battle, brought from Caesarea Maritime into Jerusalem and placed in high places near the temple. This caused a tremendous outroar among the Jews. There were protests. In fact, several of the priests went on a fast, a public fasting for weeks. Eventually, Pilate recanted and had the insignias taken down. But on another occasion, the Jewish historian Josephus, in his writings, records an event in which Pilate takes the temple funds, the temple tax funds, and uses it to construct a 35-mile-long aqueduct to improve the infrastructure of Judea, to provide water. The aqueduct is a Roman innovation. It's quite impressive. It used gravity to transport water, almost like modern-day indoor plumbing. But he used the temple tax to construct the aqueduct. And this brought more protests. This time he did not recant. He dressed some of his soldiers in peasant regalia, and at a signal, they jumped out and slaughtered hundreds of Jewish protesters. So from these two incidents, we see that you can see Pilate as a man who can be easily swayed. You never know what you're going to get. The consistency. He may recant. He may deliver the hammer. He's capable of different types of behavior. Number three, he was a real person. Some people even question whether he existed. In 1961, an Italian archaeologist named Dr. Antonio Frova, digging in Caesarea Maritime, uncovered a piece of limestone that had Pontius Pilate's name in Latin, linking him to the Emperor Tiberius. I've actually got to see that piece of limestone when I was at Caesarea Maritime a few years ago. He's even a saint in the Eastern Orthodox Church of Ethiopia. There are some that believe that Pontius Pilate converted to Christianity after Jesus' resurrection. And the church in Ethiopia recognized him as a saint. You have a wide gamut of different opinions and of Pontius Pilate. We're going to pick up the text. Let me set the context for you. So Jesus was with Caiaphas, and the chief priests were deciding what to do with him. They decided to take him to Pilate because they alone did not have the authority to execute him. So Jesus, early in the morning, is whisked off to see the Roman governor. So if you have your Bibles with you, we are in Matthew 27. We will look at verses 11 through 14 first, and then 15 through 24. Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor. And the governor asked him. I'm a big visualizer, so I'm seeing this pompous Roman governor strutting out with his clean white toga, maybe his little laurel, with a smug look on his face, maybe grumpy because he got his breakfast interrupted by these priests. And here stands Jesus, wavering from exhaustion, maybe bloodied and bruised and dirty. Are you the king of the Jews? Pilate doesn't waste any time, does he? And he's asking this question because it's a capital offense in the Roman Empire to declare yourself a king. The only king in the Roman Empire is the emperor. So Pilate has to determine if Jesus is claiming to be a king. If so, Roman law, he's to be executed. So Pilate wants to get right down to it. Listen how Jesus replies. You have said so. I've come across that so many times. You have said. Why did he say that? It's so profound. Are you the king of the Jews? Jews, you have said so. What's he mean? So I have an observation from this. And this observation is one of confirmation and challenge to consider him more deeply. So Jesus is like, you said that about me? We'll see. We'll see. He's challenging him. Who do you think I am? You have said so. From this, holding to truth involves a confirmation of the heart. Holding to truth involves a confirmation of the heart. So we can pull the keys to handling pressure and handling truth under pressure. Holding to truth involves a confirmation of the heart. I looked up the word confirm in the Latin, and it means thoroughly strong. And I thought of concrete. The Romans actually invented the first kind of mixture of concrete. They were known for building roads. Concrete's strong. How do they know the concrete is strong enough? Well, apparently there are 7 tests that they use. There's a slump test where they conduct before pouring to check the consistency. There's a compressive strength test where they take cube-shaped samples. There's a rebound hammer test. I kind of like that one. A non-destructive test where a spring-loaded hammer measures the surface hardness. There's an ultrasonic pulse velocity test. There's a flex strength test. There's a maturity method. And then this one caught my attention. There's a core test. A core test. And it says, cores are drilled from the hardened concrete and tested in a lab to assess in-place strength. So we go down past the surface of the concrete into the inner part of it to see what it's made of. Is there any truth, any reliability there? Jesus shows you that truth and confirmation. You have said so. His core is strong. Second, but Pilate then asked him, don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you? The chief priests are all clamoring at him, or yelling at him, they're finger pointing at him, they're accusing him. And Jesus doesn't say a word. A single word. And the text tells us not even a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Now in the Greek they use the word thaumasio, which we get the word thaumaturge from. A worker of miracles. He was amazed at his silence. He didn't verbally spar with him. When you get accused of something, don't you want to stand up and argue about it? I see it all the time in the classroom. There are some students, they just love to argue. They live for it. They want to verbally spar. That's not fair. No, that's not what he said. He's lying. He didn't say anything. He stood there in silence. That leads me to the second key, is truth offers silent confidence and peaceful strength. Silent confidence. He stood there to his amazement with peaceful strength. One of my favorite sports movies, and it's actually been voted the #1 sports movie of all time, Hoosiers. It's a movie starring Gene Hackman as a small-town Indiana basketball coach. And he takes a job in a very rural area of Indiana. And the name of the school is called Hickory. The movie is about Gene Hackman taking a bunch of ragtag players, none of them overly large, overly skilled, and whipping them into shape and pulling off one of the greatest upsets in basketball history. There's a scene in the movie that I think captures Jesus' quiet confidence. As Hackman takes over, or the previous coach, the team struggles at first. In fact, the people in town want to get rid of him. They have to have a town meeting to save Hackman's job. His character was called Norman Dale in the movie. And the best player on the team decides to step forward and declare, if the coach goes, I'm going. Let's fast forward, and the team gets on a hot streak, and they make it to the finals of the 1952 Indiana State Basketball Championship. And Indiana's unique is they do not have any divisions. They're all together. So you have these massive high schools playing these little tiny high schools. And Hickory was one of them. Actually, the real name of the school is Milan. I'm not sure why they changed it in the movie, but it was Milan High School. But they were taking on the defending back-to-back state champions, South Bend Central, at Butler University's stadium. And the game was close, and it came down to the last 18 seconds of the game. Hickory has the ball, and Gene Hackman's character, Norman Dale, calls timeout. And he calls the team over to the bench. And they're all huddled around, and he's going to draw up his play and try to win the game. And as he tells them what the play is going to be, he says, we're going to use Jimmy as a decoy. Now, Jimmy was Jimmy Chitwood, who was the best player on the team. In this particular instance, the coach is thinking, everybody thinks that he's going to get the ball, pull a fast one on him, and we'll use him as a decoy. That's not a terrible strategy. The guys on the team were all kind of looking at each other, their heads down. And Coach Dale noticed, what's the matter with you guys? What's the matter with you guys? And Jimmy Chitwood, who'd never said very much at all, but what he said it very profoundly. He says 3 words. I'll make it. I'll make it. Means the shot. So Gene Hackman says, all right, get the ball to Jimmy and get out of the way. And I think about that. As Jesus is standing there, in his mind, he's going, I'll make it. I'll make it through the Via Dolorosa. While they spit on me and mock me and whip me. I'll make it to Golgotha, where they'll lay me down and strip me naked and put 6 to 9 inch nails through my hands. I'll make it. I'll make it up on the cross. Or they'll laugh at me and they'll gamble for my clothes. I'll make it. I'll make it to the tomb. And I'll make it out of the tomb. Silent confidence and peaceful strength. Right in front of your eyes. And Pilate was amazed. He'd probably seen all kinds of people yelling and bickering. He has to be the judge. He's like, here we go again. I got to listen to this griping and complaining. And they're just calling insults and all these allegations against him. And he just stands there in quiet confidence. So let's continue with the text. So I'm going to go down through this next part. I'm going to kind of go through line by line with it and provide some insight into it. So we're going to pick it up in verse 15. Now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time, they had a well-known prisoner whose name was, and I find this so interesting, most translations, they just put Barabbas, don't they? Look at Barabbas' first name. Yeshua. Yeshua Barabbas. Yeshua Barabbas. So when the crowd gathered, oh, here we go, we got the crowd. Pastor Dan talked about the crowd. The crowd gathered. Pilate asked them, which one do you want me to release to you? So you've got Yeshua Barabbas, Yeshua Nazareth. Jesus Barabbas, or Jesus called the Messiah. This is a critical part here. For he knew it was out of self-interest. A great deal today, he knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to him. He knew it. He knew what they were up to. He knew it. He knew their little scheme. He was on to it. When Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him a message. Men, don't you love that? When you get the message or the cell phone, ding. Sadly, I'm not the greatest at responding to the little dings, right? But Pilate got a little ding. Probably a servant came up to him. Governor? He's probably thinking, what? Message from your wife. Don't have anything to do with that innocent man. For I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him. Oh my gosh. So now let me get this straight. Pilate already is amazed at Jesus' behavior. There's something going inside with him. Now his wife says he's an innocent man. She had a dream. So what's he do next? What's he do next? I mean, this is a guy that has crushed protests, just smashed it right then and there. He could just smash this right then and there. Release him. But he doesn't. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. The chief priests persuaded the crowd. I wonder if Caiaphas got up on maybe they got a stone for him to stand on above everybody and point. Hey, that's our chief priest. I guess we should. Pilate says, which of the two do you want me to release to you? Again, he still has the opportunity to squash this. Barabbas. Barabbas. What shall I do then with Jesus, who is called the Messiah? You know, when you really look at that, it's almost as if Pilate would have released two prisoners. If the crowd would have said so, and give us Jesus the Messiah too. Who's to say he wouldn't have complied? They all answered, crucify him. Why? What crime has he committed? But they all shouted. They shouted all the louder. Shouted even louder. Crucify him. When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, But that instead an uproar was starting. He took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. I am innocent of this man's blood. It is your responsibility. Brings me to our third key. Truth is often costly, too costly for some. Pilate was afraid of the crowd. Even though he's in charge of law and order. His wife told him, this is an innocent man. Have nothing to do with him. In other versions, it says, wanting to please the crowd. I came upon an article written in an online magazine called The Christian Post. So I call this Pilate syndrome. When the backlash or the cost of truth is just too much for you to handle. You're the Pilate. It's your responsibility. Listen to what Neil Harden, who's writing for the Christian Post, writes. But now teachers are being fired for declining to use pronouns that do not align with the truth of a student's biological sex. Female athletes are losing athletic opportunities and hard-earned recognition at their schools, race to replace biology with ideology. And healthcare professionals could be subject to steep fines, loss of medical license, and even jail time for not prescribing cross-sex hormones to patients contrary to their beliefs and medical judgment. Truth is not the only thing that comes with a cost. So do lies. Lies just hide their true cost. When the serpent came to deceive Adam and Eve in Genesis 3, his tactic was to hide the cost of believing a lie. You won't die. God didn't really say that. Unfortunately, it worked. To this day, we bear the consequences of their having believed that lie. What did Pilate miss? The truth is right there in front of him. He knew it. So what did he miss? I want to show you a quote from a Danish philosopher named Søren Kierkegaard. Had to do a lot of reading on him in seminaries. He lays it out there. Let's check this out. Take the highest example, think of Christ, and the whole of human race, all the men that ever were born or are to be born. But let the situation be one that challenges the individual, requiring each one for himself to be alone with him being Jesus, in a solitary place. And as an individual, step up to him and spit on him. So what he's saying, instead of being in the crowd, how about each one of you go up one at a time and spit on him? No one else around. In a solitary place. Just you and him. Spit on him. There's no crowd around there. Spit on him. He says the man never was born and never will be born with courage or insolence enough to do such a thing. He goes on to say the crowd is untruth. Therefore, was Christ crucified because although he addressed himself to all, he would have no dealings with the crowd? Because he did not want to permit the crowd to aid him in any way. Because in this regard, he repelled people absolutely. Would not found a party, did not permit balloting, but would be what he is, the truth. which relates itself to an individual. It's not so great a trick to win the crowd. All that is needed is some talent, a certain dose of falsehood, and a little acquaintance with human passions. So we began this message with the psychology of the crowd, and we're going to return to that. I want to take a look at that quote by Dr. Drury. It says, crowds can provide the emotional power to quickly shift an individual from the realm of personal identity to social identity. Didn't Kierkegaard just say identity is individual? So back to the booing the freshman. I'm not going to leave that alone. I was on a crusade to figure out, how did this start? I sent out emails. I contacted people from different decades. I hit up people in the 70s and went to tip. They didn't do it. I hit up people in the 80s. They didn't do it. I hit up people in the 90s and they said, we probably could have done that, but I'm not sure. And in the early 2000s, I found out something quite interesting. See, at that pep rally, when it was time for the class that would graduate in the year 2000, who were freshmen, and they did "What's Your Number?" They did the "What's Your Number?" chant. And when it was the freshmen's turn, and they're going to graduate in the year 2000, they didn't know what to say. Do we go, oh, 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 0, 0, 0, 0? Nobody knows, nobody knows. They froze. What happened? They got booed. They got booed because they had no identity. And the crowd found it out for them. The crowd found out the identity. And if you don't have your identity, the crowd will find it for you. So for the last 20-some years, the freshmen have been booed, and no one really knows why. The crowd does, or do they? They just follow who the loudest person is, the most animated. The biggest guy in the football team stands up, "Boo the freshman!" Okay, yeah. Let's all join in. Give us Barabbas. Caiaphas is just like the big guy in the football team. He gets up, "Give us Barabbas." Things haven't changed. Things haven't changed. So what did Pilate miss? He missed the opportunity to stand on truth. It was right there, and he let it go. He knew it. His wife knew it. Even the people in the crowd probably knew it. Those are some of the same people that were waving the palm leaves when Jesus came in. Now they're chanting, "Give us Barabbas, crucify him." Just because the crowd said so. So what do? It gets noisy online because you say truth about those things that I just read off. The gentleman wrote in the Christian Post. And you turn around, "Well, this is your responsibility. You're going to do what Pilate, I'm going to wash my hands. I'm not getting in this. I don't like confrontation. I don't." Jesus says, "I'll make it. I'll make it. I'll make it. I'll make it. Will you?" Will you? So in the first service, Melissa Fowle does the hearing impaired. She's a servant for the hearing impaired. And I wanted to know what the symbol was for stand on truth. So she said, first, you take 2 fingers. The truth comes from God to here. Okay? Here. Here. This is the strong support for the truth. I love that. How she said, take that bottom hand and I don't know. Do we have that? Do you have it? Do you have that when the crowd's roaring against you? When I've talked to kids about that, why do you have to participate in that? Well, everybody else does. That's a great reason. Okay? If everybody else jumps off a 20-story building, you're going to do it too? Well, everybody else is. I mean, you come down to it, it's really dumb. But that's how powerful the crowd is. That's how powerful the crowd is. And that quiet, confirmed truth that stays in, just like the concrete, in our core, deep in there. The surface might crack a little bit from the weathering, from the storms, but the core will stay there and allow you to stand on it. What's Jesus say about truth? The truth shall set you free. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, you are the deliverer of truth. Shame on us who've turned and wiped our hands clean of it. It's your responsibility. It is ours. It is ours to uphold the truth that you did on the cross. Will we make it? He made it through the whipping, the bloody, ripped up back. He made it through the mocking, through the crown of thorns being jammed on his head, staggering through the streets of Jerusalem along the Via Dolorosa, the way of sorrows. A half mile he walked, staggering around, thirsty, bloodied. Can you hear the scrapes of the cross on the ground? There it is, Golgotha. I'll make it. I'll make it for you. I'll take the nails for you. I'll make it. They hook the ropes up and they pull them up. And the weight of all that sin comes crashing down on his shoulders, and he gasps. And there he hangs in anguish, still being mocked. I'll make it for you because you're worth it. That rolls through his mind. I'll make it for you. You're worth it. And then he turns and looks upward and he says, it is finished. It is finished. And all that's left is for that tomb to be empty. And all he wants is us to empty our hearts for him. Amen.